Thank you very much indeed. So without further ado, that's really helpful, and I think that potentially might shape the conversation as well. So Bernard, welcome. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us and sharing your experiences. I'll give you a little bit of a background, if that's okay, and you might want to add to this, or say that's not true, Paul. Sorry, hopefully it's not ad-libbing too much. But you know, Bernard is a chartered accountant. And he's been living in Dublin all of his life, although he worked a big chunk of his time in London. He's married with 2 children. He's got real strong interests in both rugby, hiking, and, like many of us, desperately trying to keep as fit as he possibly can. But if he's anything like me, he's failing miserably. He looks a bit fitter than me, though, to be honest with you. So welcome, really appreciate it. Bernard spent a lot of his time, some 20 years with the Selfridges Group and the different subsidiaries, Brown Thomas, within there, and worked very specifically in supply chain, systems implementation, change management, and corporate restructuring before he joined Fenwick about 18 months ago, 2 years ago. Is that correct, Bernard?
That's correct, yes.
Super. Thank you very much. Well, welcome. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We're going to jump between John and I. We're going to ask you a couple of different questions, and hopefully we can get some really insightful answers. So thank you very much. We'll love to speak to you. And John, over to you.
Thank you very much for joining us, Bernard. Maybe before we get into the topic of the day, maybe just to help people understand a little bit about your background, could you talk, I suppose, a little bit about your career to date, and importantly, your style as a CFO?
Okay, well, thanks for having me. And one correction, Paul, I'm a certified accountant, not a chartered accountant.
Sorry.
And you've got FCCA up on the slide, so I think most people would have seen that.
Yeah.
My background, it's pretty diverse, I suppose. I would have started over in the UK. I lived over here, and I studied ACCA over here, and I worked in the city, the square mile, for unit trust companies, etc. Did a bit of advertising companies as well. You know, when you're a certified accountant, you have to article yourself. You don't get the luxury of getting all that experience like you do in charters. I went back to Ireland when I met my wife. It was just a life choice. Went back and I joined an aircraft leasing company. So I suppose, in essence, I don't see finance as an end to itself. So when I did work in the city and in aircraft leasing, it didn't really rock my world. So I decided to try systems and implementations, etc. And I think every accountant is always involved in any project implementation or rollout in your business. So I got interested in systems and project management. So from there, I joined the Brown Thomas Group. I was a project manager, etc. And I started putting in supply chain solutions and back of house. So essentially anything in the back of house that wasn't customer facing, including running the administration team or the merchandise team in the buying office, came into me. Well, I've done 20 years in Selfridges at various different, from project manager to business development director in Brown Thomas, then to business development director for Selfridges Group. I was then asked to take the CFO role in Dublin, and it was real trade-off for me, whether I was going to keep on traveling because I had to get to the UK most weeks, and/or Holland and Canada, or go back to Dublin and go back into pure finance. So I decided to take the latter. I was looking to just retire 2 years ago, and the CEO of Fenwick, who's an ex-colleague of mine, he was the CFO of Selfridges Group, John Edgar, asked me would I look at their supply chain. He knew that I was responsible for supply chain both in Brown Thomas and over the whole group of Selfridges at some time in the past, and I would have worked very closely with them. I didn't really want to take the role, I must admit, and John knows that, and he wanted me for 18 months. I only promised six months, and then he wanted full-time. I said only 3 days a week, and here I am. About a year later, they offered me the CFO role, and I'm here. So
the reason... You're a reluctant CFO, Bernard. You're a reluctant CFO.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Finance doesn't really rock me. I get figures and I understand them, and I suppose if you gave me a page with a graph, figures, and narrative, I'd look to the figures. But yeah, I see it really as a means to an end. I don't see it. I would be seen as an operational finance director or CFO. I'm very much closer to the business, to the buying, to the supply chain, the operations. That's what makes me tick. And I've got a very great team. I had it in the Selfridges Group and Brand Thomas, a very strong finance team, and I've got one here. So I can rely on them on the technicalities. And, I've got teams which are a lot smarter than I. So I don't need to do that side of it. I can play to my strengths, which is trying to bring efficiencies and move data and product in line, because that's the secret of success, I think. The last 2 years here, I suppose, last 12, 13 months has been CFO. The other was supply chain, was just putting the infrastructure in place. We put Microsoft in. They had D365, which is the finance package of Microsoft. I tagged along warehouse management system in there. We since put in POS. So we got very much an end-to-end Microsoft. And the reason for that is, I think one of your polls suggested, it's the integrations where the errors are. You buy these systems, they're actually quite strong on their own, and they're quite robust, and the integrity is quite strong in them.
Which is a good point for, I suppose, the next question. Like, recently, just implemented IBM's planning, analytics, and Cognos technologies to modernize Fenwick's planning, forecasting, and reporting processes. So could you talk about what your objectives were for that project before you kicked it off?
Yeah, I think like a little bit like we've been talking yourself. It's firstly, this business was like a lot of retail businesses, because I think we invest very little in IT and we try and get the max out of it, and we're very slow to upgrade, etc. So my objectives were really accurate and timely figures, stock in hand integrity, and information integrity. I think that was the first thing. Also that there's very smart people that I work with, both in the merchandising or the B&M team and in the finance team. And they were just doing, as opposed to sitting back and analyzing and more forecasting and estimating. So is that automation that you talked about earlier, John? That's dogged. We talk about just-in-time systems, like the Japanese have been talking about that since the 80s. And still, businesses were struggling to get there. We talk about it, but we don't seem to be very good at getting there. So obviously get the infrastructure in place, put in teams that will support that, like business controls. We didn't have a separate business controls, i.e. if cash or stock moves, we've now got a team all over that to make sure that it's done in a timely and a manner and controlled fashion, but also if we change any systems, that they sign that off so the integrity is still kept there. And I suppose that's where I started looking at the problem. I said, right, there was too much doing and recording and not enough forecasting and modeling. And I suppose, like everybody, I want to get to that. I want to get to the value add in finance, as opposed to the recorder, historically, this is the management accounts, these are the sales for last week. So it's primarily that drive to give insight, to be a real value add partner. Is the objectives of embarking with Cognos. But equally, I had experience with Selfridges Group. We put it into Brand Thomas, and I had some really good guys there too, and they would have run it, and I would have gotten a lot of information from it, because I could see things happen real time. And it did become a saying there: if it's not on Cognos report, I don't want it, because Cognos brings that integrity. It brings that whole. I know it's accurate. Whereas when I see a spreadsheet, I say, "Oh my God, how many transposition errors, or what hasn't linked in here properly?" So we have our own version. So it is that routines and rituals, which is very important, and in order to get to the real-time information, because sales, very much every retailer has it, but it's that insight to see margin happening on a daily basis and stock, and when the stock is coming in, that forecasting, that visibility from the supply chain, the B&M team, into the finance team, and into the stores, and digital versus retail. So it's all encompassing, and everybody looking at the one thing.
That's really, really interesting. And I think I like the fact that you've got the insight between the digital and the non-digital side of things as well. That must be quite interesting, because that must bring out a lot of different questions, I would think.
Yeah, I think we're immature on the digital journey. I think that's fair to say, and I think Fenwick's made huge inroads into investment in technology in the last couple of years, and we continue to do with digital. I think, like every immature segment or category of business, you kind of cocoon it, and it becomes a bit of a silo. Successful online or successful is being able to talk to a customer or sell to a customer or get a return from a customer any which way. So it doesn't matter what channels, and particularly the younger customers that we all need to tap into, the generation. So it's basically being able to do that and drive that into a business, because if without the customer, we're just not viable. If that kind of answers that question.
Yeah, no, it does. That's really interesting. That's really interesting. And I'm interested as well in what do you think are the key capabilities that you needed to effectively manage risk and maximize the opportunities, particularly within the volatile environment that you operate?
Well, I suppose I think historically I was the kind of merchandise that came into me in Brand Thomas, where the merchandisers in Fenwick are part of the B&M team, the buying and merchandising team. And I meet them weekly. And I think that's so important, because it's what we do. And I think getting that information and working with them as a team is very important. I'm very much there supporting them and say that decision's made for A, B, and C. And I think then it allows more collaborative, because like I say to the exec team, we're all part of this decision making. It's just it's the RACI or the RACI model. We all don't make it, but we're all accountable for it as an exec team. And it's just keeping everybody informed and consulted. And that's what I think Cognizant is going to bring to this party going forward, is that. But I think being part of a team is very important to me. And I think a diverse team, the more diverse it is, the better. The more that they don't think the same as me, the more I like it. And once we get those communications. So yeah, I've spent every week without fail. I have 3 different meetings with the different fashions and buying, homeware, should I say, and beauty. I meet up with the sales, the buyers, should I say, buying managers, and the merchandisers. So we and luckily, I suppose we've got now standard reports, which is helpful. And now in Cognizant, we'll be putting those reports and going live with that. And that then gives me more foresight going forward, and I'm less interested in what happened in the past. Yeah, if we can learn from it. If we can learn from our mistakes, yes. Otherwise, I'd rather look at what we're doing this week.
The point there about the importance of being in the room with your B&M and partners, and in that McKinsey report, it was very much strong on finance need to develop business partnering. I suppose it's a phrase that's been, used by everybody. Can you just describe what you mean by business partnering?
Business partnering is, you share the decision. I suppose as CFO, I make a lot of decisions. You share the responsibility too.
Yeah.
And it's basically when things go wrong, I'm in a trade meeting or a monthly review meeting, and I'm doing the talking. It goes down better with the exec team and the CEO. And I think then any junior people that are there are part of the team, they're not scared to make a mistake. They know I've got their back, because I've been in the room with them when they're making the decision to do, and I either agree or I don't. And even if I'm passive on it, I can't then turn around and say that was the wrong thing. That happened on my watch. And I think that's the only way I know how to lead is by actions. And I've got on these calls, they have some senior buying managers, you've got some senior merchandise manager, but you've also got administrators, junior administrators, and buyers. And I suppose it's like familiarity breeds contempt. I'm not the big CFO to them, but they see that this Bernard Sheehy in front of them as opposed to the CFO, and they're far more open now. And I think at the beginning they didn't enjoy the meetings. I think it was hard going. I think now the feedback I got from the two buying directors just very recently, they really enjoy it and they find it very productive and they feel that I've got their back. And I suppose that's what I mean by business partnering, is sharing the load.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's really, and do you, I mean, I think one of the things that you mentioned a little bit earlier on, and you mentioned when we spoke a while ago, was just how critical it was to keep people involved and informed within the process. And that was really a cultural thing, wasn't it? That was really important to you.
Yeah, it's everything we do. We're just, what they say is they go to NASA, they find somebody sweeping the floor, and what you ask him what he does, and he says, "I'm helping put a man or woman on the moon." We're all shopkeepers, and that would be a quote from an ex-CEO of mine, Paul Kelly. And we are all shopkeepers. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all, whether we're buying the product, whether we're processing the product or shipping the product, or whether we are selling the product, be it through digital or on through bricks and mortar. Finance, we're just trying to record and forecast and estimate a way forward and trying to be as agile as possible. But that's all fundamentally we're doing. We're trying to buy product at the right price and sell it, hopefully at full price, and get it into our stores so we can do that as opposed to mark it down at certain times of the year. So that's what we do. And I suppose what I'm hoping, and this is in its infancy, and we're still, on the financial planning and analysis side, is we've got standardized templates now that we work to, is to bring it to the exec team. And then it's incumbent on all of us, from HR to CEO. We're all part of this. We're either a team or we're not. And it's not left to the B&M directors or the finance director. I think that's important to me, that collectively we make a decision. And you can't do that when you have different spreadsheets and different conversations going on, etc. So I think standardization, getting real-time information to the exec, that they don't have to wait for Monday.
It's interesting what you're saying there, Bernard, and it brought to mind something that you had said to me before about creating that culture of trust and openness. That you actually need your B&M team to go and take risks. Because it's by taking risks that you get the big wins. And whereas I suppose finance would often be seen as the controllers and mitigating the risks. So building that environment where everybody feels part of the same team, and as you say, encourage those B&M leaders to go and take the risks they need to. Yeah,
I'm very cognizant of the fact that I am finance and I have to stay inside my lane. And that's all you need, is a finance guy telling you what brands to buy. But equally, you have to create that environment that they back Brave. So conversations go from, look, continuity stock. Look, we need it for Christmas, so let's get it in earlier. So if there's any stock out and our systems aren't as accurate as we hope, we've got a great chance of making the sale because we've got our bulk of our Christmas in. Down to, right, it comes to this part of the year, we're saying, right, we need to get out of this continuity stock or drop down the levels to a more sustainable level. And we're more focused, obviously, on if you take beauty coffee sets, for example, and how we manage that. But finance can't get into that. I can get into that figure looks right, that open to buy looks right, that the markdown depth looks like right, or what we think we're going to crash into the sale with how much stock and etc. You've got to nurture an environment that they're not scared to go in heavy in areas. So if you've got these systems in place, we can bring that agility. So we can adjust it. We can try. Okay, we might need another promotion, etc. And we're doing analysis. If you do a 10% discount, you need a 25% uplift in sales, etc. This market in the UK, and I can imagine it's like this globally, is very competitive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we're all driven these days. We're educated to buying at certain times of the year. We've got Black Friday, and that's completely changed the way that we buy in terms of timing. Discounting prior to Christmas, that never used to happen, right? Nowadays it absolutely happens, and it's people buy around that, and it's people's habits have changed, haven't they? Which is always interesting.
Yeah, Black November, I call it. There was so many retailers over here discounting from the very beginning.
Did it?
And you got to watch, yeah, you got to watch that. And I suppose a lot of retailers say, look, we need to put in beauty to get the halo effect and stuff like that. And the halo effect. How do you measure the halo effect? It's all in trends,
Yeah.
And I remember with Brand Thomas would be very much. I was working with the head of financial planning analysis, Tommy Lakes, and it was the headache or the hangover of the week after if you went into promotion, particularly on continuity product. It's trying to manage that. It's trying to manage your market share and be relevant, plus your margin. Turnover for show, margin or bottom line.
Super, thank you. Couple more questions for you, if it's okay. Very, very interested to understand the different type of plans that you operate, whether or not, we've probably gone away from the term budgeting these days, but, it'll be different type of plans, different type of forecasts, and whether or not the long-term and the annual and the seasonal plans, how they operate, and also what the impact of scenario modeling is on all of that, because I know, when we talked before, we talked about things like inflation in the past. It would have been very easy to model inflation. We just did a flat 2%. That was the rate that we used, right? Now, very difficult to consider what the inflation rate is going to be on a monthly basis, increasing and slightly decreasing as well. So interested in your thoughts on that, Bernard.
Okay. Firstly, inflation. With all my experience, you think I'd be able to handle it, but I didn't really. Most of my career, there wasn't inflation. It's only the last couple of years, and we didn't really worry about it last year. I just stepped into the CFO role and say, well, all the markets, all the global was saying, oh, this only lasts a short period. It'll be coming down by the end of the year. So we didn't really bring it into our planning. Now it's very much, and it's something that's brand new to me. So I'm leaning as much on my team, which are a very smart bunch of people, and trying to get that different opinion and what we build into the budget, because so we're looking at units versus average selling price and trying to get that information out of here and so forthcoming. So we're looking at externally for it as well. So that's difficult, and I must admit it's new to me. And as experienced and as old as I am, I can't believe I'm saying that. Whereas I suppose seasonally and all that, you've obviously got daily, weekly, and you've got your annual budgets. What we've got two main seasons, I suppose, in department stores. You've got spring, summer, and you've got all winter. And obviously now, I've been working with the B&M teams, and basically we've talked about 4 seasons. So bringing in a mid-season or a high season, if you wish, high summer, spring, summer, etc. And we've just, in the meeting this morning, we agreed, let's go to 6 seasons, because look, this is not reinvent. This is not even new. If you look at the concession partners, they're always dropping in products on a monthly basis into it, and you're discerning customer. To your point earlier on, they're looking at the internet. They're walking into your store with a mobile in one hand and looking at your product on another. So discerning customer needs this freshness. So we're looking at trying to bring that into it and break down the seasons and kind of replicate that, what the competition is. Because when concession is doing well, they want to be concession in your store, because they want to take the profit. If they're unsure of it, they might go in and own buy, and particularly the bigger brands, if it is then successful, they'll take it to concession. So I think the seasons are changing. I think the point is basically we've got to live with this multi-seasonal, and I'm saying I want to go to 6. Really, I want to go into perpetual drops, and we do that with some of our more contemporary and younger brands, monthly dropping, and that's what you need. You need to know, and then quickly have the ability to say that doesn't work or that didn't get in fast again.
Yeah, that makes sense. John, I think you've got another question.
Yeah, I suppose up until now, Bernard, we've talked about the processes, the technology that enables it. I suppose what your own team, the skills your own team need to develop. But to that point that you made earlier about just in time, the Japanese just do it. How do you build? What's the challenge, and how do you overcome the challenge of building the discipline across everybody to update the systems that allow you see everything, so you have the agility? Because if you don't see it, you can't react to it.
Yeah, that's not easy, and bringing everybody along to that party. I suppose is communication really is a big one, and I think, or this business isn't great. I can't remember a business that was great at communication. I think you can't communicate enough. And it's not just I said it to X, therefore it's X. That person might say, well, you said Y to me, actually. You know, communication has to be a two-way thing. I think if you trying to get everybody to work through the same rituals and routines won't work, because you're different aspects of the supply chain. But I think a fundamental understanding of what their role is in the bigger team is very important, and taking their opinions on board. I said to you before, every day is a school day for me. I learn from my team. I got a really bright bunch of finance people, really bright B&M teams. So it's how do you extract the information from them that you are making an informed opinion, because most of my decisions always has come from a teams or other teams. And I suppose that collaborative approach is very important. If you meet anybody I've worked with, I always employ people that are smarter than me. I don't need to be the smartest guy in the room. I just need to know if I can get the information from the smartest people, which are the ones I'm lucky to work with. The answer is going to fall out on the table. I won't need to have to really add too much magic to it, if you understand what I'm saying. But it's getting that, having people understand what they do in each part of the supply chain or the process. You know, it's a little bit like a rugby team. I always go back to rugby. I love rugby. You know, if you all know what you have to do, from the forwards to the backs to the winger to the full back, etc. But if the scrum half has been in a bottom of ruck and the ball comes out and you're the winger, you know what to do. You step into that role and you know how to play that ball. It's having that understanding without having to do the work, but understanding what your role fits in the bigger role, I think is the difficult thing, and it's what will make a team gel.
Yeah, it's very much team.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. What you were saying about communication reminds me of that old expression: your communication is the reaction you get. So if it's not working, it's about the quality of the communication.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the person receiving it. I think a lot of people said that. Well, I said it 10 times, but he or she didn't take it up that way. What do you do then? You're both wrong.
Thank you. That's brilliant. We've got one final question for you, because we are really running out of time, which is fantastic. But one thing that I know John would love to know this, and I think our audience would love to know as well. Why did you choose to partner with Pro Strategy? Where did the involvement come with?
Well, I suppose, look, I inherited Cognizant when I joined this. The last 8 years in my role in Selfridges Group was for CFO, was for Brian Thomas, and the director before me invested in it with the merchandising, who came into finance, that reported into finance, and a young man called Tommy Diggs. So I inherited it on the financial side. And I suppose I very quickly, on the merchandising side, very quickly say, what are we doing? It's just half a story here. Let's get it into the budgeting side and the finance and budgeting, and have a totally integrated system. So you start from cradle to grave, if you wish. Yeah. I suppose Pro Strategy, I inherited, I think. I remember meeting the managing director in my office, and we drove a hard business. I tried to negotiate hard with him. He always believes I did. But I think why I go back a second time, they deliver. They're a true partner. Okay. It's give and take. They got some really smart guys. Matthias is one, or Matt as I call him, really smart. He's always 2 and 3 steps ahead of you when you're in this development side, and so you want to look at this, etc. So, and they're trustworthy. I suppose 2 things that every relationship in the world, whether it's business, husband and wife, master or mistress and their dog, it's respect and trust. And I've got that for Pro Strategy.
Well, we're coming towards the end now. So really, really appreciate your involvement, your candor, and your experience. It's been absolutely enlightening. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Paul, just on behalf of Pro Strategy, just to say thank you very much, Bernard. Really appreciate your coming on, sharing your experience. And thank you, Paul, for hosting us here today.